is the story you're telling yourself? What is the belief you're telling yourself? Why is it you think you can't do it?
When I was younger, I'd really be stuck in who I was at that point. And like, I was the opposite of what you're saying. I was being my story. Whatever had happened, whatever mistakes had happened, whatever situation I was in.
I was 18 and became an adult until I was 21. You just ride the train, didn't you? You just do what's fun and you just whatever. 21 to 25, I spent a lot of time growing up, made silly decisions.
Inspiration Nation, hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast. Back to full strength this week for the first time in about 3 weeks. Both Joe and Ryan, how are we doing, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, really good.
Glad to hear it. We are right now, you may be listening to us through whatever your podcast service is. You could be watching us YouTube, or you could be with us live on both Instagram and for the first time this week on Twitch as well. So loads and loads of ways to get your weekly dose of inspiration.
Fantastic.
We appreciate everybody following, supporting, liking us. Don't forget to check us out on social media at ListenToIN, ListenToIN. So Joe, what is the topic of inspiration for the week?
This week we're talking about not your stories. So, it's all around beliefs. It's all about your values. This week, it's all about what you believe about yourself. So, your stories is really important because, a lot of us tell ourselves these stories that aren't empowering, right? We tell ourselves we can't do certain things. You can't have a podcast. You can't create content. And I want everybody to start changing that, especially we're into like second week of our new year. What are the stories you're telling yourself? You've got all this hope building up. So what is it that you're telling yourself? So again, going back to my story right at the beginning, podcast one, what was I telling myself? I couldn't do anything. I was useless. I was rubbish. Really, really downtrodden on myself. And you don't need to do that, right? Because there's a lot of stuff out there that's going to help you do that. So it's really making sure that we craft those beliefs and that we acknowledge the beliefs that aren't working for us. So you might want to go out and do something like create content or create a podcast. And you think, well, I can't create a podcast and I just can't do it. And once you do that, you cut off the possibility. So what is the story you're telling yourself? What is the belief you're telling yourself? Why is it you think you can't do it? And all you've got to do to look at the proof is look at other people that are doing it. So look at this podcast, for example, we're building it. We're now, well over a year into this podcast, and at first, I didn't think we could do it, right? But this whole belief system around let's do it. Had Lee come on board and Ryan with all the technical guru, and now going for the first time on Twitch. Even before this podcast, I was thinking, what, going on Twitch, what, how are we going to do it? And Lee said, well, let's do it. And Ryan immediately went on to it. And I think there's a lot of growth that we had. And before, I don't know if you guys agree, but we might have taken a bit more of a while to do that. We've come on straight away, boom, straight on Twitch. And it just come off my notifications that we're on Twitch as well, which is brilliant to see because I'm on Twitch as well. But it just came up, right? So I just wanted to ask you, actually, because I know there's a lot about me, guys, right? On this podcast, there's a lot about me, about my story, about the depression I went through. For me, my identity changing from just like, Joe, just helping people to becoming a coach, right? So I call myself a coach by forming that identity. So it's all about becoming who you want to become, right? Having an identity. So who do you want to become? And it all focuses around those beliefs about what you believe about yourself, what you say to yourself on a daily basis. And I really want to deep into that because I know my story. But again, I'm going to ask you guys, what are your thoughts around that? Because you already, you guys already know about my story, and I've told the audience here that are listening about my story a lot. My own story is changing all the time now, and of course, my top phase inspiration. So I take a lot of inspiration from, my feed on Instagram. I just connect with people now I find inspirational. I watch, inspirational movies like Rocky and all that. I hold those things I dug into to say what was a common theme in my life. And now I'm taking all that to build this, to continue to build and grow and continue to grow a stronger identity and become even, a stronger way of coaching, pushing through harder things, as life throws things at you. How can I respond to those things? So I'm changing the story. I'm not living in the past, I suppose, because when we live in the past, we then transfer it into the future. So it's like we bring that past, we live in the past, but we bring it into our future because we always think we'll be that person, where we can actually change if we want to become the person we want to become. And so I suppose I'm just going to hand this over to you guys about, you're not your stories. What I'm trying to say is like you can create a new story, and you are the main character in that story. And again, how are you going to create it? What are you thinking now about yourselves? And what are you going to do? Do you want to just have some thoughts on that, both of you?
Yeah, I like that. It's a good sentiment. Ryan, you got any thoughts before I dive in?
No, after you.
We've talked, and I don't think we talked about it on air. I think we've had conversations off air between the three of us where I've talked about, obviously, Joe, you've known me for a long time. Long time.
Yes.
I was trying to think quickly how many years there, but it's got to be about 15 years, I reckon, maybe a bit more than that, actually.
I think more than that, but
yeah somewhere between 15 and 20 years. Long old time. Ryan, you've known me a relatively short amount of time, although the years are stacking up now.
3 now, I think.
3, I think, yeah.
Now we're into a new year.
And we were talking about, I think it was some stuff someone was looking to do, and I talked about how if you'd have met me 5 years ago, I wouldn't be the same person I am now in a number of different ways. And I was actually thinking there while you were talking, Joe, that almost if I go back in chunks, 5 years before that, 5 years before that, in terms of my job, financial situation, living arrangements, friendship, partners, all that sort of stuff, it almost every 5 years, if I go back, it's like I'm a different person in every single one of them. And I think, and the reason that's so prevalent, because obviously we all change as we go on, is I think for a long time when I was younger, I'd really be stuck in who I was at that point. And like I was the opposite of what you're saying, I was being my story. Whatever had happened, whatever mistakes had happened, whatever situation I was in, and particularly if I'm honest, in terms of money, because I made a lot of mistakes of that when I was younger, that really in my head defined who I was. And I think it can, in a way, be a bit limiting, almost me looking back on myself. And actually, it's changed a lot. And I think, especially more recently, and then as we've started doing this, but certainly the last 5 years or so, is I've really redefined what that is, and not just got hung up on things from the past, and kept pushing ahead and kept trying to do things and dusting myself off and everything like that. And I think without knowing what it is, living that thing that you were saying there, Joe, of, you aren't your story, because actually no one really knows your story. They just know your little snippet that they see all the time that they see you in, or everything like that, whereas you know everything. And I think it's easy to presume that how you then see yourself is how everyone sees you, but it's not. It's absolutely not. And I think for me, that redefining, and if I did it now, back to 2015, 2010, 2005, going back, I'd see that. And I'm kind of at that 5 year point now. So I'm almost now thinking, God, what's that going to look like come 2025 and where that'll be? So yeah, that's my view on it. And I can absolutely resonate with that from a view that over all those periods of time, I think I've dramatically changed as a person as I've grown, but I've lived that life where I was buying into my story. And I can see how that, it was not an unhealthy thing, but I think it kind of limited my growth, that I tell myself I couldn't do things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the things that hold us back, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole can'ts, that's really, that's what I've learned through this journey.
What did you just call me?
I did not call you that.
Oh, the can'ts. Okay, carry on.
Ryan, what about you?
I feel like this is a really deep subject for our little half an hour podcast. I feel like I could talk for a good hour and a half on things like this.
Go for it, Ryan. Go for it.
I think initially, but basing it off of Lee's little 5 year period thing, I don't think I could do that, because
we've only had 6 years, so
that's literally the point. I think where I've only kind of been, I don't know, it's awkward to put it into words. Obviously, you know who you are, like, you know what you're like, and you know the kind of things you do throughout your entire life, really. But I think where I've not really monitored it, because I think when I was 18 and became an adult until I was 21, you just ride the train, didn't you? You just do what's fun, and you just whatever. 21 to 25, I spent a lot of time growing up, made silly decisions in that 18 to 21, 22-year-old period, and then really kind of worked hard on bettering myself for the last half of that 20 to 25 year period, if you like. And for me, I'm halfway through the next 5 year segment, I guess. Halfway through the first year of the next 5 year segment, I mean. And so for me, there's not much really to reflect on change. Like, I feel like I've improved massively as a person, but I also think my story and who I am hasn't changed that much over the last year, generally because of COVID and stuff, where we really can't experience much outside of watching Netflix and getting Lee to suggest shows to me that I go off and watch, which aren't usually that bad, to be honest. If you need a TV show, hit Lee up. But I feel that even though that story my story hasn't changed in the last 12 months, who I am, what I do has. Like, there are things that I probably wouldn't have been this open on the podcast a year ago if we were having this conversation. I probably would have been quite closed about it. I definitely have changed in a lot of professional aspects for the better, I would hope. I'm definitely making smarter decisions with my life. I think I've said it before, but I was very reactive rather than proactive. But I feel that balance is starting to sway the other way a bit. I don't know if it's because I'm really conscious of it, speaking about it pretty much every week with you guys, or what. But I feel like the balance is switching, and I'm kind of thinking further forward than maybe just see what happens. But other than that, I don't really have too much more than what you guys have really said. Again, I think it's a little bit awkward or tough for me because I would say I have life experience at 25, but I've not got as much life experience as you two. And that's probably a polite way of saying that I'm younger than the pair of you. But yeah.
I'd like to lump myself in with you, Ryan, and we'll look at Joe as the old man on the team.
Sure.
I think that's right. Like, I don't think at 25, and I look at where I was then, that I'd be looking back, and I don't think I'd even recognise that I was a hugely different person than I was 5 years before, although I can now see, looking further back, that I definitely was, and kind of what each bit led me into.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see where this part of your life kind of slots in with your overall story. But you're, like you said, you've really started to change some of your mindsets, and you're consciously aware of that. And that definitely isn't something I was even doing at your age. So it'd be, and I think this, self-reflecting, talking like we are, being aware of yourself, mindfulness, coaching, all that stuff really wasn't even concepts that were talked about back, 15 years ago, was it really, Joe? So it'd be good to see how this stuff makes more of an impact now. And I'll be interested to see, another 20 years on top of my experience, and I'll be where Joe is now with even more experience racking up.
Well, the thing is, and also, I'm not sure whether
he just let that ride as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that, having a life experience doesn't mean you have to be of a certain age. I mean, some people, be young and have loads of life experience. And again, I never equate wiseness to age.
In fact, Ryan, you talked quite passionately about that in a previous podcast, actually.
Yeah.
That you can be old with almost no experience or young with absolutely loads of it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Joe.
No, it's absolutely right. And I think this is the thing we can make, sometimes make a bit of an error that, we see young people. I don't want to go off track a little bit, but, I think there can be young people who can be very wise and older people who can be not very wise. Right? I think it's really about what you do and how you do it. So I really liked what you said about, how much you've changed. So I'm going to ask you both a question. How different are you from 10 years ago?
I don't know.
Back 10 years.
I don't know. Not really.
Well, you're not wearing nappies anymore, Ryan, so that's a plus point.
10 years. So
10 years ago, I was halfway through my first year of GCSEs. I was probably about to take some mock exams. My life featured solely around girls and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And
you still got one of those things going for you now, Ryan. It's all right.
And playing pool as I look over at my trophies. Humble brag.
I was just going to say that.
But 10 years on, I'm now focused on two of those three things. Maybe one of those three things really, but I've replaced pool with work and girls with Netflix because I can't go out and socialize.
So I was going to ask you, so looking back, you were like 10 or 11, I imagine that's about the right age.
So that's about 15. I'd be about 15.
All right, 15. So if you imagine back your 15-year-old, if you could imagine yourself 15, could you imagine yourself doing this right now at the age of 15? Would you say, on 10 years' time, I'm going to be on a podcast, doing Twitch, doing all that I'm doing right now at the age of 15?
No, because those things didn't exist. I think it's hard to. I see the point you're making, but I don't personally think it's a comparable point because these things didn't exist. What did I see myself doing at 25 when I was 15? Was probably working somewhere, potentially with a degree, wearing a suit, hopefully in London, earning quite a lot of money. And one of those four parameters, if COVID hadn't happened, would be happening, and that would be wearing a suit. But other than that, the others hadn't been hit. But I think it's hard when you're 15 because you don't think about that kind of thing. It's just let me get to summer, let me get to half term, let me get to my break, and then once you hit 16 and you've done your GCSEs or O levels or whatever the equivalent were when you two did them, you then moved on to doing A levels potentially, or you went off to work. And I was the last year that I could leave school without any further education and go straight into work. So the year after me had to stay in education until they were 18. But I stayed, I did my A levels. And then all I thought about when I turned 16 and doing my A levels was passing them and potentially going to university. And then 6 months down the line, it was actually, I want money, so I got a job. And then it was, I don't want to go to university anymore. I just want to earn more money and work. And then I became 18 and that stayed the same. And now I'm 25 and the motive is still pretty much the same. It's more, I'd like to move out soon. I'd like to get maybe a nicer car soon. But overall, the parameters are kind of the same, I would say.
Yeah.
But to your point, no, I didn't see myself sat on my Tuesday evening recording a podcast with two people I hadn't met 10 years ago. But yeah. I mean, I suppose you could argue that my story has led me to this point as much as it hasn't defined me to this point in a counter view.
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to say is that what people tend to do, and I really agree with this, is that we tend to overestimate what we can. We tend to overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10 years. Because usually we can do a lot more in 10 than we think we can. And we think we can do a lot more in 1 year than we think we can't. So I think that's a really powerful concept to understand. That actually, when we think we hit these goals, I really listened to some content. I think it was Evan's content actually. I think it was this morning, and it was around that. You know, we are aiming for these. If we set like a 10-year goal, we are probably going to underestimate what we can do in those 10 years. You think of what's changed in the last 10 years. Ryan, you said it yourself, right? A lot of this stuff wasn't even invented 10 years ago. Right? That's crazy. That for me, when I think like that, is crazy. When I think actually in 10 years' time, what's going to happen in another 10 years' time? If we set a 10-year goal, what would it be, right? But I think you would probably could far exceed it because a lot of things, like you said, Ryan, like these podcasts, technology, all these sorts of things will accelerate. So short-term goals are great. What I'm trying to get to is like, but have those infinite goals as things that you're always going to grow. And I think this is why this self-awareness thing is important. I think, and what you talked about actually at 15, I thought I wanted to pick up on that point as well. That do you think that having some more self-awareness at this age, because I was very similar to you, Ryan, I was just going to get a job, going to go and do a job, or got into the paradigm of just go out, get a job, earn some money. I just want to like go have a good time. But do you think it might be quite a good thing for people of that age to have a bit more self-awareness about having some sort of awareness around I can actually conduct and not react to things, and actually I can choose certain things that I want to step into. I think I was just going to ask that question, and as well. But another question I want to say is, Lee, what about you about 10 years ago? So a couple of questions there. So I don't know which one of you want to go first.
So back when I was 18, 10 years ago, very good with maths here, or 28, one of the two. Yeah, give or take. Well, it was very different for me. My kids were 1 year old. So pretty much that, having 1 year old twins, that is entirely what my life centered around, because there wasn't much time for anything else whatsoever. But I wouldn't, in terms of what my job is, what I have in terms of personal assets, even the concept, I think, of the kids being grown up where they are, the things we're doing as hobbies and stuff like this, none of this would have been on my radar, I don't think, as even things that I'd be achieving. And I think you're right. I think that 10-year thing is really interesting, because I do think you do set lofty goals within a year, but in 10 years, not so. And I don't know that for me, and it might not be the same for everyone, but for me, 10 years just seems too long a period to set goals for. And I know logically it's not, but I think that's what it is it's difficult to do it because
my attention span isn't long enough.
But on that basis, I can't set 5-minute goals. But that being the case, are your goals that you have now even going to be relevant in 10 years' time? But I think that comes back to what you're saying, Joe, about how much you can achieve, because the only reason your goals become less relevant is because you've achieved them and you're moving on to the next thing. So I suppose thinking it through, it's having that wider view of how big can you go in that space of time. Because I do think now, if I was to look at everything I'm doing now 10 years ago, I'd be like, yes, that's where I want to be. But that would be the goal. Whereas I'm here now and I've got a whole new set of goals that I'm looking at doing. And I feel as unachieved now as I did then, because I'm just living it.
The dream changes though, doesn't it? The ideal changes. So you'll set your 10-year goal 10 years ago to be where you are today, but 5 years ago you would be theoretically halfway there, and you would think, well, I've already got, per se, shall we just say, I've already got the job. So now why don't I say for that original 10-year plan I could now be in a higher job? So that ideal for me,
it just keeps moving along.
It grows with you.
Yeah.
For me,
anyway. It's good. Joe, same question back to you. So 10 years ago, when you were 50.
Oh crikey! Hang on, now I've got to think. I wasn't expecting that reverse question.
The age jokes are getting a bit old, Lee. I won't lie.
All right, I'll stop them now. This is like the intro stuff, isn't it? That got worn.
Honestly, I said that. So, crikey, yeah, I would have been, yeah. What would I be? Yeah, I wouldn't have thought I'd go on a podcast for 100%. I don't think I'd be doing this. I didn't think I'd be, talking about personal development in this way. I probably had an idea, wanted to help people, but not to the extent that I'm doing now. No InspirationNation, none of that. What's that about? I'll be just aiming to get higher in my job. That's what it would be. But now, if I'd said, right, what do I want to be? I'd probably want to say, right, I want to be, the highest up I could be in my job. But that'd be totally wrong, because I wouldn't have been, I wouldn't be doing training or coaching. It would have been more of a managerial position or leadership position, right? Just to build on that, because I'll be following that linear path. So, like you said, you have to. This is why I think this self-awareness thing is really important. That we be conscious in the moment, so we can go to the thing we need to that makes us grow. So, to answer your question, Lee, no, absolutely not. I wouldn't think I'd be here right now in front of you guys. I didn't know Ryan. I don't think we had connected that much, had we? We'd sort of lost a bit of contact.
Yeah.
Lee. So you wouldn't have been in my mind, really. Oh, well, Lee's all right, we go out. And Ryan's definitely not in my mind.
I'm just having a quick little squiz on my phone, Joe, to see where you were working at that time. I won't mention any names, but it'll just give me a point of reference.
It's just, yeah, so, yeah, it would have been, I've been so far away from this now, that this reality is just if you did take me to 40 and said, this is your reality, this is going to be your reality in 10 years, I go, what are you talking about? There's no chance we're talking a podcast, no chance we're talking about personal development, be following the corporate path, right? That'd be just me. But almost like being, not that I wasn't self-aware, because I did have some, but not to the extent of the last, I'd say 3 years have been a real accelerated growth for me. And so, yeah, to answer your question, absolutely not. So again, I would stand by what I say. I would say I probably overestimated what I could do in a year, and
Yeah.
underestimate what I can do in 10 years. I really love that because I think it's so powerful. Like, this is why people
I think
should.
it's so true. Absolutely
Yeah.
true. So and just for your reference, Joe, we weren't even in contact 10 years ago.
This is what I thought, right? Yeah.
So as you've had more chance to think about this than me and Ryan, what's your next 10 years looking like then? How big, how ambitious? What's your plan though?
Well, I'd love to be touring, inspiring the world with you guys, making this brand just go out there, help as many, I'd love to I'd love to help like 1 billion people or something ridiculous, like something that I think is really ridiculous, because I don't want to limit it. I don't want to limit it. I don't want to put a number. I should put a number in it, but I don't really want to put a number in it. If you know what I mean, it's really difficult. Do you know what I mean? It's a hard balance because I want this to go massive, and I'm speaking this now, and I would never have done that 10 years ago.
Well, I suppose it's the lesson here that you're not, your story of who you have been in the past and even who you are now isn't defining how big that can become in the future.
Yeah, and I think you're not your story. I think you create your story every day. Like Ryan was saying, the more self-aware you become, the more you choose your path, and you choose it because it's the right thing for you to do. It might be the hard thing you need to do. You might have shied away from it in the past, but now you're going to step into it and do the difficult thing, in which case it's going to make you grow. And you're not going to really see the benefit of that growth until maybe a year, 2 years down the line when you took that decision. And that's the thing I find fascinating. You look on this podcast like over a year ago. We've stuck at it. We've had hard times. Sometimes it's been a struggle to do it every week, but we've done it. It's come on, whatever, it has to happen. But this has made the podcast what it is. It's been a consistent mainstay of our lives, and and that's what I see as the future. As I've got to just keep doing it, and I just don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years' time, which I think is exciting. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's really exciting that I don't really know. That if I get the same amount of growth that I've had in the last 3 years over the next 6 years, I'm just thinking it's going to be exponential. It's going to be crazy growth. Personally, that's how I feel about it. I'm excited about what it might look like. I just don't know what it's going to look like, which I think is exciting. But every day I'm going to think, okay, so what is it? I was even thinking about that in my video. I was thinking, okay, so what is the one action today that I'm going to move towards my dream, right? And every day you take that decision. Like, it could be the minimal thing, like a video, like the 784 today, is it 784, 785? It's just those daily videos, like boom, and like over a period. Those make a massive thing. So I can do that minimum thing towards my dream. I'm going to be much more on my dream in about 6 months' time than were the previous 6 months, right? Loads of growth on all social media. It's been crazy, but great. I've teamed up with some crazy people that we know who we're talking about, right? Teamed up with, Mark Drager. It's just been crazy. So I'd never said that to you, but this is because of that whole daily, present moment, real focus around, okay, what's the step today? What's a step? Just do the step that takes you closer to that goal that you want to do, that you're there. You've got that whole purpose and drive and mission about inspiration, right? That is it. Just driving towards that every single day. Even if you feel really crap and terrible, just take one step. Even if it's really hard, just do the one micro step. But that you haven't lost because you've actually done it in the hardest moment. And that's the most difficult time, because it's easy to do it when it's easy. That's when you get the growth. Instead of doing the one more thing. So I don't know if I went on there, but
I like it. I love a good, passionate Joe Noya rant.
But I am.
That's what people are here for.
I really want people to go, it's going to be, you're going to have really difficult days, but I'm going to implore you to do the thing that's going to shift you towards what you want. Do it. Just the minimal thing. It's even if you like, they say, I think, just crawl if you have to. Just shift something. Just if the smallest thing is going to keep you on track. I'll leave it at that.
I love it. Love it, Joe.
Coming down, aren't we, on time, I think?
We are, but it's good. I think this is a really good, for me, this is a really good kind of empowering reassurance conversation, because it is sometimes overwhelming when you have your goals and when you think of where you're going and what you're doing. But actually, when you look back at where you've come from and where you are now, I think it's really quite reassuring and energizing to be, and like you said, exciting to think where that could go to. And I'm not nervous about the future. I'm excited to see what's there, but to go on that journey and make it happen as well. This is what we need to do. We need to do some long form journey updates, not just the ones we do every couple of a few times a year, but maybe we need to do like a 5-year update as well.
Yeah, and I think like you know, maybe 10 years ago, when you asked me 10 years ago, I wasn't excited about what's going to happen. I was just sort of going through life. Like, you know, I didn't feel that excitement, but now because of the things that we're doing, I'm feeling excited about what's going to happen in 10 years. What is it going to look like? I don't know, but it's going to be exciting. I think, you know, if this continues, which I don't see it ending, unless technology changes and it just shifts to a different version or whatever, I just think it's exciting to think of how much this might have grown. But what are your thoughts on that? We haven't got long left, but
no, I'm going to have to start wrapping us up in a second, Joe, I'm afraid. But of course, we want to go back to Ryan first for his views on his future, what may come in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
I don't really think about it. Maybe I should set goals, but I'm not. Same with New Year's resolutions. I thought we were going to have a conversation about those today, being that it's the first one of the new year, but I don't believe in them. Same way as I don't believe in horoscopes. Like why does the start of the year mean you now can do something? I think I understand a new year could mean a fresh start, but Monday's still Monday. Sunday's still Sunday. You don't need to at the middle of November say I'm going to wait for New Year to start something. You know, as Joe would say, idea action, isn't it? So you don't need to wait for January to start.
Absolutely.
Saving money or whatever.
Positive view, and like we said, not being defined by what's happened in the past and keep looking forward.
Yeah, I don't want to be dictated to by what may come in the future either. So just is what is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good subject this week, Joe. Really enjoying it. Conscious on us for time here. We thank everyone for joining us each and every Tuesday, 8:30, Instagram Live, and now Twitch as well. We thank everybody for joining. We appreciate the support. Of course, we're on YouTube. We're not. We're on your channel, aren't we, Joe? Jose Noya-Inspiration on YouTube. And of course, you can get us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all major podcast platforms. Wherever you are watching and or listening, hit subscribe, get us each and every week. Leave us reviews, leave us comments. We really appreciate it. The show on social media, we are at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN. Joe is everywhere. Just put Jose Noya, JOSE Noya, Inspiration Nation into the search engine, and you will find Joe and all his fantastic daily content. I think that's everything that I needed to mention at the end. We're back again next week. I'll just do a little countdown for us. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Catch you guys later.
Okay. Hope you really enjoyed that video, and remember, you are not your stories. I've got these other videos over here as well, these other podcast episodes I think you really enjoy. And also, don't forget to subscribe, it'll mean a lot to me, and don't forget to hit the bell too when another video goes live. So it's Inspiration Nation, and I'll see you there.